Hi, I'm Walt, and this is Delta Astrophotography. In my last video, we photographed the Orion and Horsehead Nebula with this, the 75 to 300mm kit lens. You can check that video out right up here. Today, we're gonna process that image. And what we're gonna need is either Adobe Lightroom or Adobe Bridge, and this is just to review our photos and throw the bad ones away. After that, we're gonna stack our images in Deep Sky Stacker. You could also use Selective if you want. And then we're gonna go to Photoshop for processing. At one point, I'll go out of Photoshop and remove the stars with a free program called StarNet++. So go ahead and get that downloaded. And also, I'll be using a plugin that sadly is not free called Gradient Exterminator. It really comes in handy, especially if you didn't take flats. Now, if you can't afford Gradient Exterminator today, I understand. So I'll also be showing you a little tip to get by and you won't just be hanging. All right, enough talking. Let's get to processing. All right, so the first thing we're gonna wanna do is open up all of our photos in either Lightroom or Adobe Bridge. Either one's fine. I'm using Lightroom because that's what I'm more familiar with. I'm just gonna click in the middle of the screen here to zoom in. And we're just gonna look at our pictures one by one to make sure that there's no real problems like with star trails, like maybe a big gust of wind or something bad happened. Maybe a car showing its headlights right into the camera for a second, who knows? Just gonna go through here, and if we see any problems, delete that picture. Now I've already done all this, so that step's over for me. So I'm gonna go ahead and stack my photos now, and for this tutorial this time, I'm gonna use Deep Sky Stacker. Now here we are in Deep Sky Stacker. This is also a free program, pretty easy to use. Just gonna open the picture files. First I'm gonna select my light frames. Now I'm gonna choose my darks. And unfortunately, I did not take any dark flats or bias. All right, now that we've got our lights and darks loaded up, we're gonna click Check All. And then I'm gonna click Register Check Pictures. I'm gonna select the best 99% because I've already gone through there and pulled out all the bad ones. I'm pretty sure that it's good, but just in case, you know, we'll do the best 99%. We'll click Advanced here and compute the number of detected stars. Here it's detected 608, that's fine. Just gonna keep it under 1,000. It works better when it's under 1,000 from what I've heard, and hit OK. So we got 169 light frames, 30 darks, total exposure time 2 hours and 44 minutes and 13 seconds. And we're gonna hit OK. And this takes a little bit longer than Selective, so we're just gonna leave it alone. I'll come back to this when it's done. And it's done, the photo's finished. What do you think? No, seriously, sometimes Deep Sky Stacker will make your image a lot darker than your initial subframes. Don't panic. Now, Deep Sky Stacker did auto-save the file, but it didn't save it in the folder I want, and it saved it as a 32-bit file, which I don't want either. So I'm gonna come over here and click Save Picture to File, Kit, Lens, YouTube. And now let's open it up in Photoshop. And here it is. Like I said, it looks a lot darker than my initial subframes did. But that's okay, that's completely normal. First thing I'm gonna wanna do is I'm going to duplicate this layer because we always work from a copy. I'm gonna hit Control-J. That's probably Command-J on a Mac. We're gonna wanna start stretching this out, brightening everything up. But as you can see right here, the core is already blown out. I should have used a lower ISO, maybe 800, gives me more dynamic range, less chance of the core blowing out, but I really wanted to bring out the Horsehead Nebula as well. So we're just gonna have to deal with this blown out core. But one thing I always do before I stretch an image is I create a star mask to keep the brighter things from being blown out as we stretch. So here's how we do that. Let's go ahead and get started. We're gonna hit Control-A and Control-C. That is Command-A and Command-C on a Mac. Now what this is gonna do is gonna highlight the entire image and copy it. Now we're gonna come down here and hit Add Layer Mask right there. Now we're gonna open the layer mask by holding Alt or Option on a Mac and clicking the layer mask. And we're gonna hit Control-V to paste the image into the layer mask. Now we need to invert it by hitting Control or Command-I. And this is what we want because everything that's black is not going to be affected by the stretch. Let's refine this mask a little bit. Let's hit Control-L to bring up levels, Command-L on a Mac. I'm gonna slide the dark over to make the dark things even darker, but let's not go too crazy with it. That's good enough right there. And go over here to our highlights and bring those over to the left. Just a little bit. And the last thing we need to do to complete our star mask is go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and we're going to blur it by about 5.5 pixels or so. Now that seems like a lot, but after you do it a few times, you can fly through creating a star mask. It's pretty easy. Now let's click back on the actual photo itself. We don't want the layer to be selected. We want the photo itself to be selected. There's still some marching ants around the edges. We can get rid of those by hitting Control D for deselect. All right, let's do our first stretch. We're actually just gonna bring up the levels. I'm gonna hit Control L, Command L on a Mac. We're gonna bring our midpoint over to the left till it kind of touches this data spike right here. There we go. Now it kind of looks funky, but once we hit OK, it won't look all weird like that. And there we go. Now I'm definitely starting to see some detail in the Orion Nebula, and I can see the Flame Nebula a little bit and hints of the Horsehead right here. Next step we're gonna do is we're gonna create a new layer on top. And the way we do this is by pressing Control, Alt, Shift, and E all together. That's Command, Option, Shift, and E on a Mac. It just takes everything you've already done and creates a new layer on top. Also, if you don't have your histogram open, let's have that open because we don't want anything getting too far to the left. That means we'll be clipping data. We don't want that. So if your histogram is not open, just go to Window and Histogram. Now you can see on the edges here, I've got some stacking artifacts. So we're gonna go ahead and get rid of that by cropping. Let's go ahead and crop. There's many different ways to crop. This is just how I'm gonna do it. Actually, I'm gonna go back to the zoom and hit fit screen. Okay, yep, crop. I keep it at original ratio. You can do it your own way, but this is how I like to do it. Just crop and get rid of some of those weird edges from stacking artifacts out of there. Also, my framing's not that great. I should have had the Orion Nebula over here and the Horsehead Nebula over here, but whatever. We can fix that later with more cropping. Make sure delete crop pixels is not checked. That's important. And we can either hit this check mark or we can press enter. Or we're cropped. Hit our zoom tool and just click fit screen again. All right, now we can see a little vignetting in the corners. That's because I didn't take flats. Let's get rid of that. Let's create a new layer. Control, Alt, Shift, and E. Command, Option, Shift, and E on a Mac. Now we're gonna click Filter, Camera, Raw Filter. And just make sure we're opening up our Optics tab right here and just move the vignetting slider to the right until the edges are more even. There we go, that looks good. I'm gonna hit OK. Now let's do a levels adjustment. We're gonna hit Control L, Command L on a Mac. I'm gonna bring this over closer to the data. Don't wanna bring it past it because it gets too black. You can see the histogram up here on the top. It went all the way to the left. That's clipping data and that's getting rid of information that we'll never be able to get back. So not all the way, just close enough. Now let's adjust the individual color channels. Come right here to Channel RGB and select red. Let's bring that in. Not all the way, just maybe right before it. I don't want the background sky to be really black. So maybe just right before the data right there. Same thing with green. We want to look at our histogram too and just trying to balance the colors out. You know, we don't want green to be, you know, to the left of everything or to the right of everything. Everything needs to just kind of line up just like that. And the same with blue. I'm looking at my histogram and just lining up all the colors to make sure they're all lined up together. There we go. That's very balanced. I'm gonna hit OK. Let's create a new layer. Control, Alt, Shift, and E. The reason we're creating all these layers is because if we make a mistake, we can go back. Step by step by step. It's a non-destructive workflow. All right, now we're gonna do a curve stretch. And before we do that, I wanna create another star mask. Here's your chance to learn how to do that again. So hit Control A and Control C. It's Command A and Command C on a Mac. Create a layer mask by pressing this button down here. Hold Alt or Option and click on the layer mask to open it. And let's paste our photo in there by pressing Control or Command V. Invert it, Control I, and a little levels adjustment, Control L. Bring the darks up a little bit and the highlights down. So there's some nebulosity in here and kind of want to keep some of that, but we don't want it to get too blown out either. So we're just going to bring the whites down a little bit like that. Hit OK. Click back on our photo instead of the layer mask. Get rid of these marching ants by pressing Control D. Now we're ready to do our curve stretch. I'm going to hit Control M, and I'm going to click this little finger pointer icon. It's giving me a dropper, and I'm going to put the dropper over some of that pink nebulosity in the Orion Nebula. Click, hold, and pull up. I'm going to press OK. Now we've definitely got a lot more detail going on, but we're starting to blow out this core a little bit more. So let's go ahead and fix Orion a little bit. Let's click back on our layer mask right here. Now we're going to come over here to this side and make sure this is selected to black. Our background color is selected to black. It needs to be the opposite of this right here. So you can change it right here. I want it to be black. Zoom in on the Orion Nebula right now and select our brush tool right here and choose an opacity of maybe, let's try 40%. You can change your brush size with the bracket keys on the keyboard. Let's kind of click around kind of in this core area, maybe right here. See, there we go. That's more like it. Don't overdo it. And that's all I'm going to do with that for now. Click back on our main photo instead of the layer mask. I'm going to click this zoom thing and go up here to fit screen again. All right, let's create a new layer. Control, Alt, Shift, and E. Now we're going to deal with the gradients. You can see it's really dark over here and really too bright over here. This is when I would use Gradient Exterminator. If you don't have that, hang on. I'll show you another way to kind of balance the background a little bit as well. But to use Gradient Exterminator, what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to come up here to my lasso tool, click that. I'm going to draw a circle around the targets that I'm photographing. Now I'm going to go to Select, Inverse. So now everything but these targets are selected. Basically our background is selected. And we go to Filter, RC Astro, Gradient Exterminator. And I'm just going to leave it at medium, medium, and hit OK. And beautifully balanced out that background. I'm going to press Control D to get rid of that circle. Now we could probably do a levels adjustment. Control L. Just bring that in slightly. Yeah, there we go. It's looking nice. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to name this GX for Gradient Exterminator because we're going to go back for a second. Okay. So if you didn't have Gradient Exterminator, this would be something I might try. Let's bring up curves by hitting Control M. See this little middle dropper right here? That selects your gray point. We're going to click that. And we're going to click in some dark area down here. There we go. I'm going to hit OK. Bring up levels, Control L, and bring them in a bit. That was pretty good too. Still a little bit of problems down here. That's going to get cropped out later anyway. So that's how you would do it without Gradient Exterminator. There are probably other more advanced methods. As a matter of fact, I've seen some on Astro Backyard, but this is pretty simple for now. Let's compare what Gradient Exterminator did to the gray point adjustment. This is Gradient Exterminator. This is the gray point. You can definitely see still a little bit more of a gradient in this color. And who knows, I might have created that when I was correcting vignetting. So I like the Gradient Exterminator better. We're going to run with that. So let's create a new layer, Control, Alt, Shift, and E. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the stars, create a stars only layer, and edit our stars and our deep sky objects separately. We're going to do this with a program called StarNet++. I've got that program saved on my desktop. So what I need to do is we're going to save a copy of this image, File, Save as Copy. I'm going to go to my desktop and click on the StarNet folder. I'm going to uncheck layers here. I'm going to check this ICC profile sRGB right there, and I'm going to hit Save. No image compression. Now we need to go open our StarNet folder, so let's do that now. Okay, so here's the inside of the StarNet folder. We're going to take the copy of the photo we just saved, and I'm going to drag it down to RGB StarNet++. Just drag it right on top of it. This is going to open up and it's going to run, and it takes a while. On my last computer, it took up to 30 minutes. On my newer computer, it takes about 5 minutes, maybe a little more or less. So I'm going to leave this alone and come back when it's done. Okay, it just completed and it left a file called Starless in my StarNet folder. We're just gonna drag that back into Photoshop. And there we go, there's our starless image. Now we need to create a stars only image. So let's go back over here to what we were working on before. If you've got a older or slower computer, maybe this is the time you might want to flatten. I don't normally recommend flattening an image, but if you're working with an older, slower computer and you're just adding on layers and layers and layers, it's going to probably crash at some point. So if you need to flatten, just go to Layer, and down at the bottom, Flatten Image. Now that it's flattened, we'll hit Control-J to make a copy. I'm going to title this Stars Only. Stars Only. And to create a Stars Only image, we go up here to Image, Apply Image, and we go to where it says Source, and click our starless image. Now here on Blending, we go to Subtract, and set our offset to around 2. Click OK. Now we have our stars only image. Let's go ahead and edit that just a little bit. If we zoom in, we can see this kind of reddish fringing around the stars. That's from using the cheaper lens. And we're going to go ahead and get rid of that. Do that by going to Filter, Camera Raw Filter. Once again, we're going to go to our Optics tab right here. Let's go ahead and zoom in so we can see the stars better. And we're going to turn the purple amount to the right and maybe add a little more red in there by dragging this to the right as well. See, that got rid of the kind of reddish halos around the stars. We can do a few more adjustments to the stars if we want. We can go to Basic and mess with the temperature. It does seem slightly yellowish. I can bring that down to the cooler blues just a touch. Move it away from green towards the magenta just a touch. That looks a little more neutral to me. Just be careful and don't ruin your star colors too much. I'm also going to go to Detail and bring up Noise Reduction just in case there is any noise in there that I can't see for some reason. Okay, I'm going to hit OK. Click Fit Screen. Let's zoom back out. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to shrink these stars a little bit. Let's go up here to the top to Select, Color Range, and we're going to go up to the top and choose Highlights. Pull our fuzziness up and our range down until a lot of stars are selected. Let's press OK. Now there's some brighter stars in there I don't really want to shrink because I think they add to the photo. So we're going to deselect those by clicking the lasso tool and holding Alt, Option probably if you're on a Mac. Hold Alt, and while you're holding that, just draw a circle around the bigger, brighter stars that you don't want selected. This is just a personal taste thing, but this is what I'm going to do. Holding Alt, drawing circles around big stars. I can tell this right here just from looking at this photo so much. That is actually the blown out core of the Orion Nebula. I might leave that alone and let that get shrunk. There's a big star I'd like to leave in there. These stars right here are near the Running Man Nebula. I like those. We're going to leave those alone. Okay, all right. Now we're going to go back up to Select, Modify, Expand. That just makes sure that the entire star is selected and maybe a little bit outside of it as well. Now we're going to go to Filter, Other, Minimum, and keep the radius at about 1 pixel and hit OK. Let's hit Control-D to deselect, and now we've got smaller stars. We are done with the stars only layer for now. Let's go over to our starless layer. All right, we're going to hit Control-J so we can work from a copy. Let's do another curve stretch. I'm going to hit Control-M. I'm going to hit this pointer finger button. Bring the dropper over to some of the nebulosity here. Click and hold and pull up. I can see the corners are really bad. That's probably because I overdid it during the vignetting correction earlier. But all right. We brought out even more detail. So let's hit OK. Let's correct this core again by adding a layer mask down here. It's white. Make sure black is chosen over here. Let's zoom in on the nebula here. Click our brush tool. Like I said, change the brush size with your bracket keys if you need to. Just bring some of that detail back in there. Okay. The next thing we need to do is correct some of the artifacts that StarNet++ has created in this image. if you look around, I'll try to zoom way in so you can see this. All these little blue smudges and stuff in here, we need to get rid of these. Zoom back out a little bit. Now this is very tedious, and this is why I use Star Exterminator over StarNet++, because Star Exterminator, when it removes stars, it does not leave these artifacts behind. Now it does cost $60, but if you want to try it out, here's a link to my video about Star Exterminator right up here in the corner. For now, we got to manually get rid of all these artifacts. We do that by coming over here to our healing brush tool. I'm going to right click it. I want the spot healing brush tool right here. Change the brush size with our brackets, and it didn't work. That's because I forgot to create a new layer. Control, Alt, Shift, and E. All right, let's try that again. There we go. Go around and get rid of all these little artifacts. This is going to take some time. Could take 10, 15 minutes, but we want to get it done. There we go, beautiful, I like it. Wait, I might still see some more over here. Yep, and there we go. That's a pretty clean, starless image now. I'm gonna create a new layer, Control, Alt, Shift, and E. Hit Control L for levels, and just bring that in a touch. So right here, I'm just gonna use Gradient Exterminator one more time. Lasso tool, draw a circle around this, select, inverse, filter, RC Astro, Gradient Exterminator. This is kind of a bad one, so let's go with coarse and aggressiveness high. Hit OK. That cleaned it right up. Hit Control D. Another layer, Control Alt Shift and E. See if we can get away with one more little stretch by hitting Control M. Just bring that up just a touch. OK. Let's zoom in on the Orion Nebula. Try to correct the core a little bit again, just by creating a layer mask. Choosing our brush. All right, now what we're gonna do is do some color adjustments. I'm gonna create a new layer, Control, Alt, Shift, and E. I'm gonna go to Select, Color Range, and choose Sampled Colors. Gives me a dropper. I'm going to click in the pink right here in the Orion Nebula and bring fuzziness up until we see a good bit of the nebula down there selected. Looks good to me. Got some of the Horsehead selected in there as well. Hit OK. Now we're going to come to Select, Select and Mask. And we're just going to feather this selection a little bit. Maybe by about 10 pixels. Okay. Now we're going to go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, Vibrance. And just bring the vibrance up a little bit, and a little saturation as well. Okay, looks great. Let's create a new layer and do another color. Control, Alt, Shift, and E. Let's do it again. Select, Color Range, Sampled Colors. I'm going to click some of this. I'm going to click some of this outer dust and gas. Now this is not hydrogen alpha. This outer dust and gas really reflects blue light and not a lot of other light. It's called light scattering. So it's probably going to have a hint of blue. Now this kind of hazy looking color is probably more natural, but we're gonna see if we can bring out a little bit of that blue because it just looks cool. Adjust my fuzziness. We don't want, it to look like that. Just want some of the nebula selected there. I'm gonna hit OK. Once again, select at the top, select and mask. Feather it by about 10 pixels, hit OK. Now let's go to Layer here at the top, New Adjustment Layer, Vibrance, and bring our vibrance up a touch. There we go. Saturation just a little bit. Brings out those blues nicely. Control, Alt, Shift, and E. And finally, we're going to do it for the Horsehead. So select, Color Range, Sampled Colors up here at the top. Click right here in the red of the Horsehead. The fuzziness down. I really just want to see mainly the horse head selected down there. That looks good. Let's select OK. Select and mask. Let's feather it by 10 pixels. Hit OK. Now let's go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, Vibrance. Hit OK. Now let's turn our vibrance up a little bit. And saturation, there we go. Definitely brought out some of that red, that's some of that hydrogen alpha. Looking good. Let's create a new layer, Control, Alt, Shift, and E. Let's do one final color adjustment. Let's go up here to the Adjustments tab up at the top and click this one that looks like an envelope. It's Selective Color. Now we got red selected, and let's just kind of play with the individual sliders. This is cyans. So look at that, it brought that hydrogen alpha out even more. Let's try magenta. I don't like it that way. It looks pretty good that way. We don't want it to drift into the purple though. So just be careful there. Yellow, try left and right. See that, put it into the purple. No, we don't want that. I'm just gonna leave yellow and black alone. That looks good enough to me. With selective color, sometimes it gets hard to make a new layer afterwards. You hit Control, Alt, Shift, and E and nothing happens. If that happens to you, just hit the Escape button on your keyboard. Then you can hit Control, Alt, Shift, and E for a new layer. Now the next thing I'm going to want to do is do noise reduction on this background. There's not a lot going on. There's a little bit of dust, and if I was to get brave and do even more stretching, I could bring that out more, but not today. We just didn't want to do noise reduction just on the background. So the way we're going to do this is go to Select, Color Range once again. This time we're going to choose Highlights and make sure the nebulas are in there, but the background is not really highlighted very much. Kind of like that. That looks good. Hit OK. Select, and mask. And let's shift the edge to the right a little bit, just to add a little bit more of the nebulosity in there. And now let's feather that by 10 pixels. There we go. We hit OK. Now we've got our nebula selected, but we want everything else selected. So we're going to go to Select and Inverse. There we go. Now I want to create a mask. But before I do, I don't know what a mask on top of a mask really does in Photoshop. So what I'm going to do is this selective color that I had down there before, highlight that, hold Shift, and click the layer below it. I'm just going to right click and say Merge Layers. I'll click back on our top layer here. And we're going to create a layer mask right here. We want to look at the layer mask, we can hold Alt and click it. What we'll see is everything that's black is not going to have noise reduction on it, and everything that's white is. So let's click back on the photo and go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter. Close the Optics tab and go to Detail. Move up the Color Noise Reduction and the Noise Reduction. Now, in your Camera Raw Filter preview menu, it looks like you're doing noise reduction on everything. But don't panic. Because of that mask, once you hit OK, it's only going to apply the noise reduction to the background. Let's hit OK. There we go. It's definitely cleaned up the noise in our background. Now we're getting close to being done. Hit Fit Screen here. So we're going to do a final Camera Raw adjustment. I'm going to hit Control, Alt, Shift, and E. For a new layer, let's go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter. Now let's do our final little adjustments. I'm going to go up to Basic. I'm going to bring our exposure up just a little bit, brighten it up a bit, contrast up a little bit, blacks down a bit. Let's bump up our clarity just a touch, dehaze it just a touch. There we go, that looks nice. And a touch more vibrance. Not much, definitely don't want it to look like that. Might bring my whites down a touch. And finally, let's go to Detail and add just a touch of overall noise reduction. I wouldn't go higher than 30, really, that's too high. There's a lot of cool dust down here. I like that, so let's just do a little bit of noise reduction. There we go, I'm gonna hit OK. That's starting to really look neat. Now let's add our stars back in. Let's come over here and click on this. This is our stars only photo. So I'm gonna hit Control A and Control C, Command A or Command C on a Mac. Come back over here. I'm gonna hit Control V to copy it. Now it's copied it right on top. Now all we need to do is come right here to our blending mode and change it to screen. Boom, we got our stars back. And I think that looks really awesome. Let's create one more layer. Control Alt Shift and E, and Control Alt Shift and E didn't work because screen right here is still highlighted. We can hit Escape, Control Alt Shift and E. There we go. And now we can do any final adjustments we want. I might hit Control L and do a little levels adjustment. And I'm gonna crop a little bit. Now, if you wanna blow this up and print it and stuff like that, it's not gonna look very good after all this cropping, but if you're just trying to share this on social media, it's gonna look fine. Crop in a little more. Hit enter. One more technique I forgot to mention that we might wanna try. If we look here at the Horsehead Nebula, we can see that it is still a little overly noisy. So let me show you how to reduce the noise in just one region of the photograph. We can go up to Filter, Camera Raw Filter, bring up our noise reduction a good bit. Let's kind of zoom in on the horse head, see when it starts looking good. About there. Definitely bring up the color noise reduction too. All right, and hit OK. Now at first it is going to apply that noise reduction to the entire photograph, but all we have to do is come down here, create a layer mask, and then hit Control or Command I to invert it. Now nothing has noise reduction on it, and we get to choose what does. So now that our layer mask is black, we come over here and switch this, our background color, to white. Very important you do that. Let's zoom in on the horse head, choose our brush tool, and we're just gonna start painting in over the horse head. All we're doing is painting in that noise reduction, only on the spots where we want it. And that looks good to me. Click my zoom tool and hit fit screen. There we go. Now I would say this is a final image I'm happy with. And there you have it. Hope you learned some new techniques. The goal here is to take these techniques and apply them to your own style, not necessarily copying a workflow, because everybody's photos turn out different, whether it's different lighting conditions or what. If you liked this video, please give me a like and leave me a comment as well. What kind of content do you want this winter? What kind of object should I photograph? I want to hear from you. As always, everybody, stay spacey and clear skies.